Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Conrad Gorlinski, and this is the news. Well, the big news in Poland today was Polish tennis star Iga Świątek, the current #1 seed in women's tennis, succeeded in winning her second French Open title today. Her win today makes it her 34th in a row and 15th in a row on clay. Next, Law and Justice, or PiS, held a party convention today in the suburbs of Warsaw. During the meeting, the achievements of the United Right camp was summarized, and a new mobilization was announced. PiS politicians will be going on a campaign across the country to talk to Poles and to present their new program proposals. Jarosław Kaczyński, the president of Law and Justice, listed the most important successes of the United Right's government: lowering the retirement age, digging the Vistula spit, and diversifying gas production. The president of PiS also noticed areas where certain promises were not realized. Jarosław Kaczyński included the apartment subsidy program Apartment Plus among those unsuccessful programs. At today's PiS convention, however, there were no new specific program proposals. The catchphrase of today's convention was mass mobilization. President Jarosław Kaczyński, Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, members of the government, and parliamentarians of Law and Justice will now begin their tour of Poland. Donald Tusk is already traveling around Poland, but PiS politicians emphasize that the mobilization campaign announced today is not at all a response to the actions of the PO chairman. The United Right has ruled since 2015. Since then, the Prime Minister, ministers, and even coalition partners have changed. But despite this, PiS continues to lead the polls, thanks to the consistent implementation of their election promises. The 101st day of the war in Ukraine has passed. Fierce fighting in Severodonetsk is still underway. The Russians continue their missile and air attacks against military and civilian targets in the east of the country. Also, Ukrainian defenders in the Donbass managed to fend off 9 hostile attacks in just this past day alone. Mariupol's occupation authorities began demolishing buildings partially damaged by artillery fire. The city's advisor, Petro Andrushenko, considers the destruction of residential buildings to be an attempt to cover up the war crimes committed against the Ukrainian civilian population by the Russians. We cannot obtain data from the next victims because after the demolition, everything is taken to the landfill in Lewobrzeże. If the corpses remained in the buildings, they were discharged along with the garbage to the landfill. The inhumane treatment, even of the dead, has gained unprecedented momentum. The Russians installed air defense systems and rocket launchers on Snake Island. On the other hand, 2 frigates with Caliber missiles are stationed in the Black Sea. The city of Sumy was also fired upon by surface-to-air missiles again. High-precision missiles launched from the air were delivered to the artillery training center of the Ukrainian armed forces in the Cherkasy region. Foreign instructors came to this center and conducted partial training for Ukrainian soldiers in the handling and fire control of 155mm M777 howitzers. Yesterday morning, the Kharkiv timber factory was bombed. So far, local authorities have not reported any casualties. As a result of the raid, however, a fire broke out, destroying machinery, nearby industrial facilities, and the stored wood supplies. Windows, roofs, walls, all made of wood, all types of roof covers. We produced all these products here, and there was a great demand for it. Now we're out of work. Yesterday morning, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, visited wounded soldiers in a Kiev hospital. I'd like to thank you again for your sacrifice and fighting on the front lines. Our soldiers are also in the trenches in a similar condition. Medical operations are performed not only in wards, but also in military hospitals and trenches, where you and your colleagues save other people's lives. Despite the ongoing offensive by the Russian forces, the Ukrainian army's resistance is bearing some fruit. Yesterday, the governor of the Luhansk region, Serhiy Gaidai, announced that he managed to recover about 20% of the territories lost in Severodonetsk. We really lack long-range artillery. The enemy shoots our positions for hours and then engages a company of newly mobilized troops into the battle. They die, and when they realize that the firing points are not suppressed, they start firing again. This situation has been going on for 4 months. This is how they move forward, step by step. And with artillery, planes, mortars, they raze everything to the ground. With the support of Western equipment and long-range weapons, we'll push their artillery out of our positions. And then, believe me, the Russian infantry will just run away. Since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, the Russians have suffered significant losses, which are as follows. Around 31,000 soldiers, 1,376 tanks, 680 artillery systems, 210 aircraft, 175 helicopters, and 2,337 vehicles and tanks. Despite international pressure, the Kremlin is not willing to talk to Kiev, which, according to experts, heralds a further escalation of the conflict. Senegal's president and African Union chairman Macky Sall was in Moscow on Friday to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. His visit comes amid a huge danger of African and especially North African nations running out of grain this year. Ukraine's inability to export its grain and fertilizer could cause many to starve. President Sall said Russia's Vladimir Putin told him on Friday, June 3rd, he was ready to enable the export of Ukrainian grain to ease the global food crisis that's hitting Africa especially hard.
L'Afrique, tout en étant très éloignée du théâtre des opérations,
Africa, while being very far from the theater of operations, was one of the first collateral victims of the war, since Africa has a weak economy and cannot adapt. And therefore, this crisis has led to the stoppage of exports on the one hand from Ukraine, but also, on the other hand, from Russia because of the sanctions. So we were there between these two.
L'exportation des graines ukrainiennes, mais surtout que la Russie également.
Sall, who's chairman of the African Union, said he told Putin to help facilitate the export of Ukrainian seeds, and added that the Russian president said he was completely open to this. He added that Putin told him he was willing to facilitate exports of Ukrainian cereals through Ukrainian harbors, including Odessa, if Ukraine demines its Black Sea port, or via the Danube River through Romania. Putin, however, does not seem as willing as President Sall described. Russia does not allow grain exports from Ukraine, and let me tell you why. First, about 800 million tons of grain are produced each year. Now we're told that Ukraine is ready to export 20 million tons compared to the total world production. How much is 2.5%? Moreover, we consider that wheat accounts for only 20% of all food production in the world. This is not even our data. This is said by the UN. That would mean that those 20 million tons of Ukraine wheat is 0.5%, a drop in the ocean. Moscow blames the situation on naval mines floating near Ukrainian ports and on Western sanctions that are hitting its own grain and fertilizer exports because of the impact on shipping, banking, and insurance. African countries are acutely affected by the growing crisis, which has sent prices of grains, cooking oils, fuels, and fertilizers soaring. Russia and Ukraine account for nearly a third of global wheat supplies, while Russia is also a key global fertilizer exporter, and Ukraine is a major exporter of corn and sunflower oil. And finally, China's Shenzhou 14 space shuttle will take 3 crew members up to the core module of their Tianhe space station. They'll spend 6 months in space, readying 2 new modules of the station, the Wentian and Mengtian modules. China's first female astronaut will form part of the 3-man team. The Shenzhou 14 manned mission is slated to be launched at 10:44 tomorrow morning from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in northwest China's Gansu province, authorities announced today. during the three-member crew's 6-month stay in orbit. They'll complete the construction of the Tiangong space station with a basic 3-module structure consisting of the core module Tianhe and the lab modules Wentian and Mengtian. According to the mission plan, the Shenzhou 14 crew will also continue to carry out a series of in-orbit science popularization activities, including the Tiangong class space lectures. China's first female astronaut, Liu Yang, spoke about the classes during a press conference. The Tiangong class space lectures are part of our space science popularization activities. The crews of future space missions will continue to conduct such activities, which will have some differences from previous ones. I think the Tiangong class in the future will be more interactive, enabling our audience to have a stronger sense of participation. During their stay in orbit, the Shenzhou 14 crew will witness the 2 lab modules at Tianzhou 5 cargo craft and Shenzhou 15 crewed spaceship dock with the core module Tianhe. They'll rotate with the Shenzhou 15 crew in orbit and return to the Dongfeng landing site in North China's Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region in December. As usual, thanks very much for joining us this evening. Please stay with us for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and other programs. But from me, let's have a wonderful Saturday night.